A very good morning to one and all. Welcome Dr. Zaraina of Women's Christian College. This I feel is a very timely topic. When the world is facing a pandemic of grave nature, we need to have resilience to win over it and emerge victorious. Resilience is the result of patience. Patience in turn is a quality which we can develop. And so this topic, I hope, would throw light on developing patience and thereby resilience. I congratulate Dr. Sujarita and her faculty members for organizing this webinar, that too on a very timely topic which we all need. Basically we all need these steps to know and get patience and resilience. So I congratulate them all, and I especially congratulate our IQAC team led ably by Dr. Abdul Rahim. I welcome all the participants here to this webinar, and I really would hope that this would make us more resilient in times of grave pandemic nature. Thank you. Welcome all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for your kind words of wishes and blessings. And it's a joy. It's a real joy to welcome all of you. We have about 500 people who registered for this webinar, over 100 from 100 institutions. And we have people, the participants are from all over India. That's really, it just thrills me because it's like all of you visiting the Department of Psychology, Presidency College. So we really extend a very warm welcome once again to all of you. We have almost 200 to 300 students. The remaining are faculties from different institutions across India. And also we have special friends from Qatar. A warm welcome to them. And we have other professionals joining us, and even a few homemakers. And we are so glad that you've taken this time. You chose to spend this time with us. And now it's a real privilege to introduce the resource person of today, Dr. Zarina Ahmed. We, the department, we take great pride because she's an alumnus of our department. A few words about Dr. Zarina. She is currently working as the assistant professor of psychology in Women's Christian College. She's been there for the last 15 years teaching psychology. Apart from that, she's also a counselor with 20 years of experience as a counselor. Now, Zarina has been an invited speaker and a resource person for many workshop and training programs. To her credit, she has a lot of research papers. Now, while her MPhil was on child abuse, she did with us at the Presidency. Her PhD topic or focus was on building resilience. And that's the very reason that we chose her to be the resource person for today. Apart from this, she also has her special training in inner healing at Bangalore, and she serves as a therapist in focusing exclusively on inner healing. So I'm really sure that we have a lot to learn from her. And welcome, Dr. Zarina, and over to you.
Thank you, ma'am. Good morning, one and all. I would begin by, I'll just start sharing my screen and then I will begin. Are you able to view the screen, my screen, ma'am?
Yes, sir.
Good morning, one and all. And it is my pleasure, it is an honor to be with all of you today, to be part of this webinar. And I would like to thank Presidency College for inviting me, the organizers, the Department of Psychology. As Dr. Sucharita said, I was privileged to study there, to do my MPhil at Presidency College. And I especially thank all my friends at the Department of Psychology, Presidency College, because I've had a wonderful experience with all of them. Thank you so much. And also to you, ma'am, Sucharita ma'am, you've not just been my guide academically, but also my mentor, both spiritually and in academics. So thank you so much. And yes, we will move on to this topic that we're all going to look into together: adaptation to change, building resilience. Yes, some of what I'm going to speak is going to be based on the research work that I did in my PhD. And it is really a pleasure that I'm able to share it on this stage with all of you, hoping that it would be useful to all of you. I trust that you're all safe during this pandemic, and we are all looking for ways in which we can cope and adapt with change. So let's take this journey together during this 2 hours to see how we can build our resilience. Let me start with a story, something that you may have heard recently because it was being forwarded on WhatsApp. Yeah, there is this man who in his school was a super achiever, always with 100% in all subjects, very excellent in studies, and moved on to doing his IIT. And there again, he had several honors to his name. And after doing his IIT, he got the opportunity to go abroad and do his MBA. And also promptly gotten a job in the US. And he was so successful that he was able to have, to purchase a house, a 5-room apartment, and excellent facilities. And he had such a luxurious life. And he got to marry a person and had children and was living quite happily when there was economic recession that happened. Now, there was a change in his life right now. He lost his job to begin with, and slowly all his savings also started dwindling. Now, what happened was we hear that this man committed suicide, but before doing that, he shot his wife and also his 2 children. Now, I read that the University of California, incidentally, where he was staying and working, wanted to take up this as a case study and see what was the reason behind such a successful person to get into this behavior of wanting to end his life. Now, while talking to his friends, while talking to other family members, it was seen that he had tremendous potential for success. In fact, what was highlighted, what they found out was he seemed to be programmed for success, but he was not trained to face failures. That is what I think is becoming a reality right now, especially for all of us in India, where success is so important for us, whether it is academic success, whether it is success in our job. I think we have focused so much in terms of becoming successful that we have not really moved on into looking at how we can face failures. So with that, I would like to move on. We are moving on to change now to begin with, before we move on to resilience. Now, change is a word that we are all familiar with. Now, change is both positive and negative. We all go through changes in our life. When I say positive change, we are looking at changes that would be getting a new job, getting into, getting married, doing a lot of things, moving abroad. All of these are also changes that happen in our life. But when there are changes that are positive, the adaptation that we are going through, that we are taking in terms of going through this change, doesn't seem to be stressful for us. For example, I know that there are a lot of students today who are, part of this webinar. Now, as students, once you finish your studies and when you get a job, now that's something wonderful. You would have all been waiting for, an opportunity like that. But once you move into a job, you will find that there are so many changes that will have to happen in your life, like even moving from one place to another, like from moving from your hometown to another place, totally new to you. That is a change. That is also what you're adapting to. But we don't really pay so much of attention to it. We just adapt to that change. But the problem is when the change is negative. Now, we talk of negative changes as a crisis, as a problem situation in our life. Now, there are two ways in which you can look at this. Your attitude towards a crisis or a problem, the way you think about it, unlike how you think about a positive situation and you automatically change to it, it is your thinking process. We look at it as a negative situation. When you think about it as a negative situation, what happens? There are a lot of negative emotions that come along with it. Anxiety. Then you have these thoughts of, what if I fail? Because we are focusing so much on failure today. What if I fail? What would be the end result of it? There is so much of fear and anxiety, and then you don't seem to be prepared to face that change. You could also look at a crisis or a problem as a challenge or an opportunity. Do you see the difference between looking at it as a negative situation or looking at it as a challenge or an opportunity? It is the way you think about it. When it is a negative situation, you find that there are associated negative emotions. You find that it is crippling you from making those changes that are required. But if you view these crisis or problem situations as a challenge or even as an opportunity, you find that you're able to move on and start adapting to it. Coping is something that we all do. When you say adapt to change, we are actually referring to certain ways in which we cope with the problem or with a positive change in our lives. Thoughts, actions that we use in order to deal with these problems. Now, as I told you in the beginning, these ways of coping, when it is a positive situation, is not something that you are going to become weary doing it. You do it automatically. But then coping becomes difficult, stressful when it is a crisis situation. How do we look at situations in our life, especially negative situations that come in our way? I would like to, move on to looking at it in a very personal way, rather than looking at this webinar as, just some information that you are going to obtain. Can we do a reflection together, all of us together, including me, in terms of how you and I have adapted to change, how you and I have looked at ways of coping, because all of us are experts in it. I think, when we start off, we usually introduce the resource person as the expert. But let me tell you, you are the experts because you have lived your life, okay? Whether it is a student for 17 years of your life or whether it is a senior citizen for 70 years of their life, you are the experts in leading your life. You know what it is when you think of coping. You know the problems that you have faced and the ways in which you have adapted to change. So let's take this journey together in thinking about the ways in which we look at negative situations and the ways in which we cope. Shall we start this journey together then? Okay, so remember what I said, you are the experts. Okay, now this picture is reminding us again of the pandemic. Now, this pandemic, this COVID pandemic has become something very extraordinary in terms of, a change that has happened, and the coping that we are supposed to do, because it has some very, strange characteristics. Any change that happens, a different situation in our life, we wait for it to stop, right? Okay, there have been times that we have faced natural disasters. For example, in Chennai, where I stay, we have gone through a flood, there had been a tsunami, but then we found that this was a period that lasted for it was short term. And we found that we were moving on after that. But right now, as we are facing this pandemic, something very characteristic about this is it seems to be never ending. Isn't that true? Never ending. The uncertainty seems to be going on and being very, different, this situation. How is it that we are coping with change? I would like you to look back at what we have learned. Students would agree with me. I would love to, see their faces when I say this. What have we been taught till now? Just think about it. Don't sit at home. Why are you whiling your time at home without doing anything? I want to repeat that. Don't sit at home without doing anything. What were we asked to do during this lockdown? The very same thing that we were taught not to do. Isn't that an irony? Now that was going on in our minds. And therefore, for some of us, it was very difficult to stay at home. And actually, I should put it in quotes saying, to do nothing. That caused stress by itself. What else have we been taught? We have been taught to take control over our lives, to be productive, to achieve something, to keep doing some work or the other. Now, these are voices that we have heard, we have internalized. And today, these are the same messages that are creating problems. I'm sure you would all agree with me. Today, we are in Chennai, we are again, from today onwards, we are facing another lockdown. Now, while we are sitting at home, actually, in quotes, doing nothing, what are the thoughts that are going to go on in our head? It was not the first 21 days. It was not another 40 days. It is 2 months, 3 months. Now, that makes it especially a very difficult situation for us. So with that, I just move on. Think about it. What is true of you? This statement, I tend to bounce back quickly after hard times. Think about it. We are not here to judge anybody. It is not right or wrong. But typically, how do you react to stressful situations? It is just for self-reflection. I do not want you to respond. Or, is this true of you? I have a hard time making it through stressful events. I want you to think about it. I tend to bounce back quickly after hard times. Is this true of you most of the time? Or I have a hard time making it through stressful events. Keeping that reflection in mind, I would like you to listen to this. You can read it too. It is your reaction to adversity, not the adversity itself, that determines how your life story will develop. The author has said it right, isn't it? It is your reaction to adversity. Of course, from what I have said in the previous slides and what I shared as our reactions, we have been taught to think in particular ways. And that is the reason why we react in a particular way to adversity. I would like you to all to be conscious about what you have learned through your life. What have you been programmed with? When it comes to adversity, how do you deal with it depends on what you have been programmed with. I think some of you are familiar with this person, Viktor Frankl, an existentialist. And in the field of psychology, we have gained a lot in terms of his theory as well as his therapy. Now, Viktor Frankl was one of those survivors in the concentration camp during the Nazi period. And he had recorded his experiences once he moved out, once he was able to survive the concentration camps. And this is one experience that he puts down. Now it says, we who live, now this is what Viktor Frankl says, quote, we who lived in concentration camps can remember the men who walked through the huts, comforting others, giving away their last piece of bread. They may have been few in number, but they offer sufficient proof that everything can be taken from a man, but just that one thing, the last of the human freedom. Do you know what he said it was? To choose one's attitude. In any given set of circumstances, to choose one's way. Now, we all know what happened in the concentration camps. People did not have to be led to the gas chamber for them to die. They were humiliated. They were stripped of their basic, what they were trained in. For example, doctors who were trained to, do surgery were not allowed to do surgery, while a cobbler would be made to do that surgery. They were humiliated. They were stripped of that purpose that they had in their life. Now, in all of this adversity that they faced, Viktor Frankl, along with a few others, found there was purpose, there was meaning. And here you realize that their purpose was to comfort others, to be able to lend help to others, even if it meant that they would go hungry. Now, this attitude is something that is given to us. I believe that God has given that to us. The attitude that we have in order to choose when we go through any circumstances, whether it is adversity or not, to choose our way in which we would like to think about. So, what do you think about the adversity that is happening right now? You have the freedom to choose. Now, with this freedom to choose, I want you to reflect back on this news that we heard. Two bits of news that I'm going to present in this slide. The first thing, it says this Kerala student committed suicide because she was depressed. And the reason which is mentioned is that she was unable to join online classes. Now, it also says that they were poor and she had been pushing her father for the television to be repaired. Now, this has been quoted by the newspapers, by the media. Now, again, we are nobody to judge. Now, she has fought in her way to try and win over the adversity. At the same time, there was another news that came. I'm sure you would have seen this picture. Another student who tried different ways in which she could study the online classes that was being given to her by her college, again in Kerala, and found out that her roof was the one that was giving her utmost coverage, network coverage, and therefore she decided, with her parents' support, to go up to the roof and to study and to have her online classes. I just want you to think about what would have gone on in these young children's minds, especially the girl who committed suicide. What would have gone on, even as we hear, whether it is true or not, we do not know, but we hear that her teachers were preparing, were arranging for her to not to miss these online classes. There must have been thoughts that were going on that this is not going to end. There would be no no silver lining in whatever she was going through. And that may have led her to this decision that she made. I just want you to see the difference in the way people think. We are not here to condemn anybody. We are only looking at our own selves, and this is only to help us in our reflection. What goes on in people's minds when there is an adversity? What thoughts do we choose to have? What thoughts do we choose to pursue? Yes, that takes us to the topic of resilience. Now, resilience has been looked at as a way in which we cope with change. Adaptation to change, resilience, yes, definitely helps us. Positive adaptation is what we look at. We all have been familiar listening to these, phrases, bouncing back in the face of adversity and so on. Now, it is not just, a one-time thing. It is a strategy, a process. Are we born with it? That's a question that, all of us seem to be asking. Researchers have said, yes, it is a personality trait, but to an extent. But you also find that the environment, for example, the home environment could have been a protective factor, which would have helped the person develop resilience. So I use the word develop resilience. Psychologists have found that we can train people in this strategy, in this process, in order to positively adapt to stress and adversity. Now, this is what we're going to focus on for the rest of our webinar. Okay.
Zarina,
now,
1 minute.
Yes,
We'll have a break around 11 o'clock. For 5 minutes break for you.
Sure, ma'am. Sure.
Okay,
so
because continuously you're talking. Yeah.
Yes. So I will take that break, ma'am, at 11. Okay, so what do you see here? It is a reservoir. There are ways in which we can, I have put it in this way. Now, we all seem to be having a reservoir of ways in which we can handle or cope with adversity, especially ways in which we can build our resilience. And now, if a reservoir is full, all of us know how we can use that water not just for ourselves, but also for others, for the surrounding, for the neighboring areas. You will find that the dam, the reservoir, actually helps to water the plants and so on. Now, if you think about what has happened in your life, you would have seen periods in your life where you were able to cope with a failure or cope with adversity quite well. Now, I would like to you to think about it. It looks like your resilience tank, your reservoir was quite full, at least half full, if we can say. With all of these ingredients that I have mentioned, I will move on to those. Now, when it was full, we found that we could draw out of it, and it was not an easy job, but we were able to handle the problems. But just the next year, maybe a year or after that, you must have found that you're completely drained out. Maybe the situation that you faced the next time was not as bad as it was, but you found yourselves lacking. You found yourselves parched and thirsty. Now, can you think about this reservoir, resilience reservoir, as I call it? Do you see the ingredients inside? This is how we can build resilience. The different ingredients are self-discovery. When you know what your strengths are, you're confident to move on in your pursuits. Relationships. Now we find that relationships are a means of social support, not just in our good times, but in our bad times also. Fostering wellness. We all got to know a little bit more about this during this lockdown period. I'm sure you'll agree with me. Not just the physical wellness in terms of going for an exercise, taking care of your physical health, but also your mental wellness. Helping others. It has been seen that being altruistic is a wonderful way which helps us become resilient. Our past accomplishments, the purpose of meaning in life, as I mentioned in Viktor Frankl's quote. Now, I have highlighted optimism, engagement, and gratitude, which are the three that I'm going to be handling in this webinar because of the time that we have. Now, optimism is the very first ingredient that I'm going to be looking at. Let us see how we can build resilience by looking at our ways of thinking, especially, are we optimistic? Okay, what is your cup full of? I'm not talking about half empty. I'm talking about what is your cup full of. Let us see if we can fill ourselves today, a little bit of it, just the beginning. And that is going to help us cope with adversities such as the pandemic that we are facing. Isn't this true? Life inflicts the same setbacks and tragedies on the optimist as on the pessimist, but the optimist weathers them better. What is optimism? An optimist is someone who expects that good things will happen to them. He tends to see setbacks as temporary events caused by circumstances. So they are not permanent in a person's life, they are temporary. And so, rather than giving up or feeling helpless in the face of failure, optimists view it as a challenge that can be overcome or fixed. I want you to focus on that word, challenge. Optimism, are we born with it again, just the way we look at, are we born with resilience? Yes, by nature, some of us are more optimistic than others. When we talk to people, when we have examined our own patterns of talking, our ways of explaining, if I can put it that way, you will find by nature, some of us are optimists, some of us are pessimists. But the good news is that research shows that we can build optimism. How do we build optimism? This term, learned optimism, was given by Martin Seligman, and he and his colleagues have done a lot of research which looks at optimism as something that can be learned and not just a personality trait. Learned optimism in the research that has been done has been seen to promote health, well-being, motivation, performance, and success. The good news is we can learn to be optimistic. How can we learn to be optimistic? We first have to know what our explanatory styles are, because optimists and pessimists seem to differ in terms of their explanatory styles. So when there is a situation that happens in our life, and interestingly, these are not just negative situations, a positive situation also. How do we explain it? Now, even as I give you ways in which you can understand how these explanatory styles differ, I want you to think about yourselves. How do you typically explain situations that happen in your life? Now, you can even think of this as these tape recorded messages that run in your head, which would be going on, repeated, and it would say a lot of negative messages. And these negative messages is something like you're not able to press a stop button and say, okay, I don't want to think about it anymore. They seem to be going on and on. So even as I move on to the different ways in which we explain situations in our lives, that is what is called as the explanatory styles. Can you think about situations in your life? Okay. Now, explanatory styles can be, we can understand them in terms of three dimensions. The first one is the internal versus the external dimension. Okay, let me give you an example. Okay, let's understand both the explanatory styles of pessimist and optimist. Okay, and yes, so this situation would be where this person wins a prize. Okay, so somebody is winning a prize. Now, how does an optimist usually think about it? Okay, now the optimist would say, yes, I worked hard for it, and therefore I won the prize. Okay, now he takes pride in his ability and is able to say, yes, if I continue to work hard, I will be able to win more prizes because I have the ability and I'm gifted in this particular area. He also has the confidence to move on and try out different other activities because he knows that this hard work is going to help him to be successful in other areas. Okay, so you find that when it is a positive event, the optimists are able to say, yes, it belongs to me. Now, this is something that I have done, internal, stable, and they are global. But when it is this same positive event, how do you think a pessimist would react? The pessimist is going to say, after winning a prize, let me see. Some of you may be thinking about it and saying, yeah, it is true of me. Okay, the pessimist would say something like this. It just happened by chance, just by luck. I think the judges were very lenient, were very generous. I don't think this will ever again happen to me. It is just one time that it happened. And just because this happened doesn't mean I will be winning prizes otherwise. Do you see how they have explained even a positive situation as being external, unstable, and specific? Okay, let's look at the negative situation. Okay, now I'm sorry, students, I'm going to use this something that you are all looking ahead and getting very worried about the exams, but I did have to take this example because it will help us. Now, failing in an exam is the example that I'm going to be taking up. How does an optimist look at this situation, this negative situation? An optimist, okay? Now, this optimist is going to say, this particular exam I failed because I was not feeling well. I had this particular difficulty. You will find that they are able to look at circumstances in terms of the external circumstances and see what caused the difficulty. Now, let me tell you, I am not saying that they are trying to take off the responsibility from themselves. They are able to realistically understand what the reason was. They would be able to say, when I take the next test, there is another time when I can take this test and I will be able to work hard. In fact, I'm going to commit myself to work hard, and then it would be a success. There is always another chance. That's how the optimists are going to think about it. Okay, and they're also going to look at it as one exam, not their life. How would the pessimists look at it? The pessimists are going to look at it this way: I am a failure. They would blame themselves internally. They would say, I will always remain a failure. Okay, even if I take another test, what's the point in studying? Because I'm going to fail anyway. It's also going to be global. When I say the person is saying I am a failure, they are not only referring to failure in academics, they are saying I am a failure in life. Do you see how we tend to have different explanatory styles? Do you see how an optimist is able to think about issues or problems that happen? They do not blame themselves. They do not think of it as permanent, nor do they look at it as applying to other situations in their life. Now, looking at these, we can say these are automatic explanatory styles. The good news is we can train ourselves to be optimistic, or we can train ourselves to look at our explanatory styles. Once we are aware that they are pessimists, we use a pessimistic explanatory style, we can change from this explanatory style of being pessimistic to optimistic. Okay, what is a healthy explanatory style? I have highlighted, I have put down external, unstable, specific. It is just a one-time event. It does not apply to all other events in my life. Are we able to look at it this way? Now, even as you're thinking about the ways in which you typically explain events that happen in your life, please do not look at this as an explanation, as a theory. Think about the ways in which you react to adverse events in your life. What are the ways in which you explain? Do you seem to resemble the explanatory styles of a pessimist? No worries, you can always change it. Now that is something that I did in my PhD thesis, and my thesis was on academic performance, resilience building for helping students, college students, to improve their academic performance. And the focus was on helping them identify what their explanatory style was, and if they had pessimistic explanatory styles, giving them ways, teaching them ways, activities and homework in order for them to change their explanatory style. I have not just changed my attitude in terms of academics. This has had an impact on other events of my life. Now that is very heartening for me to understand. Now that was the purpose too of my research. Once we understand that in one area of our life, if we change our explanatory styles, we can actually move on to have a different pattern of thinking in other areas of our life too. So do you want to think this way? As a pessimist thinks, it is okay. Now, I look at our culture, and I realize that we have things only to avoid shame. Okay, I will do it not because I like to do it, but what will people think of me if I don't do it? So let's not look at it this way. If you do have a pessimistic attitude, a way of explaining things, it is fine. Nobody is condemning you. No one has the right to condemn you too. So you don't have to condemn yourself. It is understanding that helps you move towards change. So if you are thinking this way, it is because of me. I blame myself. Or if you think this way, negative events will last forever, or it will impact every other area of my life. Okay? I would like you to know that you can change your pattern of thinking to being more optimistic. That is, you trust that you can cope with the situation, because there are things that we control, things that we are not able to control. A realistic approach. We are able to see negative events in context, and we are able to see negative events are just one event in our life, or just one area of our life, and not the norm. Okay? How do we change this explanatory style? We are all familiar with this. When there is something bad that happens to us, negative that happens to us, we all get very worked up, stressed out, depressed. There are fears in our mind. We think that that's it. This is the end of everything. But there is something secret that is hidden in between this. We are only aware of what happens to us and the consequences. But do you know what actually governs what I've been talking about till now? The explanations that you give, the beliefs that you have in your mind. What you can do is to debate these beliefs. Debating, we know, advocates do it. We know that they debate, they fight for a cause, but when they fight, they do not fight with no evidence in their hand. Okay, at this point in time, I'm reminded of this, so I'm just bringing it to you. Some time back, there was such a popular movie remade in other languages too, which was called Three Idiots, where we had this, maybe we can say slogan, which said, all is well. Okay, you find that there are, that was really a heartening movie. It was wonderful. But then sometimes it can have, implications, because we can't just unrealistically say all is well in an adversity. So here, as psychologists have looked at optimistic explanatory styles, I would like to reiterate the fact that it has been done in a scientific manner, studied and tested, and we are not looking at fantasy. We are looking here to do identify your beliefs to be negative ones, to be pessimistic ones, the debates that you can have with yourself. Yes, when you go to a counselor, the counselor is going to be the one who's going to ask you these questions. But now what I'm going to tell you is, why not ask these questions yourself? For example, you failed in a particular test, okay? And you conclude that you are a failure. The questions that you can ask yourself is, to begin with, I'm asking you these questions. You can apply it to any other situation. I lost a job, I had a break off in my relationship, and so on. Okay, and you conclude that you are a failure. Okay, the questions would be like this. How many times have you failed? Can you remember, recall right from childhood up to now? Maybe even as a homework, to take some time and to say the number. So there were 30 instances, for example, when I had an achievement-oriented activity. Now, out of the 30, how many times did you fail? We are going to quantify it here. Do you see how this debating goes on? It is a realistic appraisal. Okay, fine. Now, there were 10 subjects in school. Out of the 10 subjects, I failed in 3. Yes, maybe even 5 or 6. Now, what about the other 4 that you passed? When you say always a failure, doesn't it mean 100% of the time? So here we are saying 60% of the time I passed, or 40% of the time I passed. So you're going to be asking questions here. Okay, you can ask these questions yourself, but you're not going to condemn. You're not going to, do it because you want to do something out of shame, but with this freedom to choose this attitude and say, now how many times did I fail to call myself a failure? Okay, what happened? Okay, now you specify, say, okay, it was maths specifically where I had a problem. So out of the other subjects, it was only one subject. You realize, okay, so always you're not a failure. How many times I have failed in maths? Out of the 10 tests that I have taken, I have failed 6 times. So you're narrowing it down. Again, it's not 100%. Okay. Then you look at it in terms of a more meaningful question. It was academics. In academics, it was maths. If you actually ask them questions in terms of what you are good at, they may say, you can look at yourself and say, I was actually good in biology. And I have passed in all the tests in biology. It was in maths that I had a problem. But how do we make our conclusion? I am a failure in academics, not I am a failure in maths. Now, when you have such a change in attitude, you find that the difficulty that we face when we take our books and I'm sure students would agree with me when I say this. all the words in that book becomes blurred because you are gripped with that fear of saying, how much ever I study, I'm going to be failing. Okay, now that attitude is going to change. So here is it, the questions that you're going to ask. Okay, if it is a relationship failure, okay, to say, I am not worthy to be a friend at all. Whichever relationship I get into, this is the same thing that happens to me. And if I am a failure here, I'm a failure in life also. I'm not going to do well in my job too. Questions that you can ask, I'm sure by now you know what questions you're going to be asking without condemning. The questions would be, how many relationships have you had, including the ones that you have at home? What are the special relationships that you share? Now, what are the specific characteristics that happen in this particular relationship that caused it to turn negative? In fact, when you ask these questions, you will find that the person has put in so much of effort. And in spite of putting in that effort, they still believe they are to be blamed for what has happened to them. You will find that the person, while this debating happens, has this, can I use the word enlightenment? You know, this idea of how much they are worth, that they have put in as efforts, either in passing that test or in making that relationship work, that they have never seen that side of it. They've always been blaming themselves. If they have said that the relationship failure is the reason why they think that they are a failure in life, you can ask them about things that they have excelled in, things that they enjoy doing. When they start talking about it, you will see that the truth comes out. I remember I said debating, it's truth that comes out here. They are actually passionate about so many things. And with that passionate involvement, they have also put in their efforts in this relationship too. Too bad the relationship did not work, but they were due to external circumstances. I hope it is clear to you. I wish I was there in front of you to be able to actually do some activities, to help you with debating. But I guess that these questions that I am leaving you with is going to help you start off this questioning process. And so even as you begin this journey of debating, let it be an enjoyable experience. I don't want you to stress it out, to get nervous about it. Remember, you have the freedom to do this debating. Even if you don't feel like doing this debating, my question sometimes when I speak to my clients is, so what? Who is going to condemn you? Would you not want to stop condemning yourself for whatever you think you are? Let us have the freedom to be ourselves. Let's just try and start this process of debating if we do think that we have a pessimistic explanatory style. Before we go for our break, I would like you to read this quote. An optimist is a person who sees only the lights in the picture, whereas a pessimist sees only the shadows. An idealist, however, is one who sees the light and the shadows, but in addition sees something else. The possibility of changing the picture, of making the lights prevail over the shadows. We will take a short break now. Ma'am, can you tell me, it's for 5 minutes. I would like you to take a short break, get up, walk around, get back after 5 minutes. Thank you.
Yeah, it's just that let's not leave. Let you keep logging in so that there won't be any difficulty, joining the meeting again. And what we would like to do is, Zarina will just take a few minutes break, 5 minutes. And then when we get back, she will go on with her presentation till about, say, 11:15 to 11:20. Then we will have a question answer session. So in the question answer session, what we will be doing is we will have two options. Either you can send your questions through chat. Right now, we have disabled the chat. So at that point, we will enable the chat and you can type your questions through chat, and our organizing secretary will pick up the questions and read it out for you. Or we will also have you can raise your hand. Show off your hands. If you raise your hand, then the technical team will help you unmute, and then you can ask the questions directly to Dr. Zarina, and she will be able to answer you. So this is how we will operate during the question answer session. I'm sure you would have found the session useful until now. So maybe even you can take a few minutes, go around, and we will exactly in another 3 to 4 minutes, we'll be back. Thank you. Don't log
Madam,
out.
with the permission of the HOD of psychology, only 2 announcements. And I think 1 or 2 participants still you have not joined the audio. If you are not joining the audio, you cannot hear anything at all. One thing. And I will tell I just show the method. For joining the audio, you just click this button. Okay. Then this button will be turned like this. Then only you can hear the sound. Okay. So 1 or 2 participants, they have not still joined the audio. So they are not able to hear, I know. But you have to click this symbol. That symbol should be turned into a mic-like symbol one. And as Madam pointed out, during the question answer session, you can have the raise hand option. Okay, that options are here just for your reference. Those who are new to the webinar, we are telling. So that option can be found according to your device. In some of the devices, it will be found nearer to this more region. When you click more, you will get this raise hand word. You can click. In some of the devices, you will have this symbol. You can click it. In some of the devices, you click participant. There you can see. So that depends upon the device. So find out where is the raise hand, and if you click the raise hand, we will come to know that you want to ask some question, and we will unmute you. Okay, thank you, madam.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
So another few minutes, Zarina can start on her own.
I think we can start so that we will have enough time for question answers.
Sure, ma'am.
Okay, so even as you have been reflecting on the ways in which you explain adverse events in your life, I'm again reminding you it is possible to train ourselves, to retrain our minds in order to think in a positive manner, to explain events that happen in our lives. Remember, both the positive events as well as the negative events. We are not to be blamed. There are other reasons when there are failures that happen. It would be referring to one activity where there has been a problem, and it does not relate to other areas in our life. Now, having this in mind, let me also say, when there are things that we cannot change, are we able to accept them? I think I should finish with optimism and explanatory styles with this slide, because we are not here to change the world. Let us remember, it is only our attitude that we can change. So we are not going to be trying to control the uncontrollable. That is why I made a reference to statements like, all is well, this too shall pass. We do not know when it will become well. We do not know when it will pass. Now, understanding, acknowledging the reality of the situations, we are not going to be trying to take control of the environment. All we are doing is the change that can happen in the way we think about the situation. Look for the upside. What is the positives that you can see? If it involves people, share your feelings. Even any adversity for that matter. That is why I said the social support is very important. Share your feelings. And if it involves people, learn to forgive. It is so powerful. You'll find that you're able to change your attitude far much more easier if you find that when you find that you're able to forgive others. So with this, now remembering that we cannot change situations, especially like this pandemic, where we are going to be taking things, doing things in order to safeguard ourselves. We cannot change the situation outside, but we can always change our attitudes. Okay, I hope you're able to see this picture. This is something that I took very recently. If I can say, the lockdown period. Are you wondering where it is from? I'm sure you must have had your guesses. This was on the very first, time when we had our lockdown. One of those days with no maids. I was just standing in the kitchen. It looked like it was never ending, right from my kitchen window. A photo, a picture that I had taken. Now, this was the first picture that I took. It looked rather sad. When I looked at it, it seemed like I was caged. You know what? After a little while, I decided to take my camera outside this grill. This is the picture that you see. You see how this perspective changed? It gave me a feeling of happiness. Just a small thing. I'm sure those of you who are experts in photography would not really agree with it, but I felt so happy even to see how that picture had become different. Your perspective matters. Are you looking at your situation from behind bars, or can you take your camera outside that bar and see a very different perspective? Okay, that takes me to the next aspect, the next ingredient of resilience after optimism, positive engagement. Okay, now the word positive actually has caused so much of trauma for all of us. I just remember reading another forward, a little funny forward, which said, there is this man who, suddenly as he was reading the newspaper one day in his house, his neighbor, a young man who comes over to his house in a hurry, and he says, uncle, can you give me your scooter keys? I'm in a hurry. I have something urgent to do. So this man says, okay, take it. And this young man goes taking the scooter, and after a while returns back. Now he comes, gives the scooter key in his hands, gives him a hug. He's crying. He cries and he gives him a hug and just leaves. Now this man is in a shock. He's wondering what happened. He says, thank you, uncle, and he goes actually, and he's crying. And this man just goes behind him. He is able to overhear what is happening in the young man's house. And this young man is telling his wife, it is positive. I just got the lab reports. It is positive. Now, can you imagine the reaction of this man who gave his scooter keys? He says he actually runs, takes the scooter key, washes it. Not only that, he runs to the scooter, washes it with Dettol 4 or 5 times, comes back, takes a bath himself, but he's so angry, he cannot contain himself. He goes up to that young man's house and he says, how can you do it to me? You said it is positive, you came over to me and even hugged me. This man looks puzzled and he says, uncle, what are you talking about? I just went to the lab. It was my wife's pregnancy report. It is positive, and I'm going to become a father. And he's so happy. Now, this reminds us now of the kind of reactions that we go through when you hear the word positive. So let us remember, not all the positives are negative right now. Okay, so positive engagement. Sometimes the word flow is used in order to explain this positive engagement. Okay, let me ask you, you just took a break and got back. How many of you are right now here in the present moment? For a while, because you don't really, you're not seated as audience, you're in your own homes, you were able to concentrate. But I'm sure for many of you, after a while, your thoughts moved on to, what is my next webinar going to be? What is the lunch that I have to prepare? What is it that I have to do in the evening? Did your thoughts wander? Focusing on the present moment is something that can be very difficult for us. Again, remember, I told you we have been asked to do things, we've been asked to be productive, that we rarely enjoy the present moment, especially with activities. Now, flow is something that helps us, move into this blissful immersion in an activity. You just lose control of time and you just forget that, time has passed by. Now, these are pictures that for some of you would, you would relate to. For some of us, we just get blissfully immersed in activities like cooking and baking. For some of us, gardening. I'm sure some of you have found out all of these, have had the time to do these during this lockdown period. Dance, singing, craft work. What about work that we do? These are hobbies, passions. What about work? Can we positively be engaged in work that we do, that you just forget the present moment? It is possible. I want you to reflect on it. Now, when you are spending most of your time in the day with by positively engaging in activities. Remember, I'm telling you, even work, it is not just hobbies. You will find that resilience develops and you're able to face adversity better. Now, we find that we are flitting. Either we move to the past, we're thinking about the past. To be in the present is very difficult. Or we are going on to think about the future, as I told you just now. It may be true of any one of us at this moment in time. Okay, what after 12 o'clock? What do I do? You may already have started making plans, but to be in the present moment, to be fully engaged in what we are doing, to be absorbed in what we are doing is a very healthy attribute. I think we need to train ourselves to do this. For so many of us, when it was difficult to stay inside the house during the lockdown period, we were trained and programmed to do so many things at one given point in time. We were not focusing on the present. The present moment is so precious. Do you remember when when all this pandemic happened? There was this sudden categorizing that went on as the media put it to us. The government had said there were essential activities and non-essential activities. Can you imagine? For those of us academicians, when the college shut down, when school shut down, we had to realize that what we thought of as our life's calling was just stamped off as non-essential activity. I do not know how students reacted to it, but then it was non-essential. What do you think then is essential? If I have to be honest, I would say it is the gift of life that God has given us. And I believe that this present moment is so precious to us that we need to enjoy and be immersed in our present and not move on to worrying about the future or not even thinking about the past. This is how it would be when you are in a state of flow. My mind isn't wandering. I'm not thinking of something else. I'm totally involved in what I am doing. My body feels good. I don't seem to hear anything. The world seems to be cut off from me. I am less aware of myself and my problems. Do you see that last sentence? This is how we can engage in activities, whether it is work, play, hobbies, whatever they may be. If we can immerse ourselves in activities, not force ourselves, not stress ourselves, not do it because we have to, but because we want to. I think that would make a lot of difference to our physical as well as our mental health. A few quotes that I would like you to read. I want you to drink it in. Remember, we are on this journey together, trying to fill up our reservoir of resilience. Don't let your past define who you are. Let it be part of who you will become. Don't ask for things to get better. Ask that you get better. It gives us actually a feeling of control to say, yes, my thoughts within me are the ones in my control and I can do something about it. I choose to do something about it. It is a choice that you have. You don't have to be forced to do it. Okay, now the last ingredient that I wanted to mention, it would be incomplete if I would, stop without it, is gratitude. So I'm not going to go into explaining gratitude. All of us understand what it is. And during this pandemic, we have had opportunities to actually think of what, we have been blessed with. So now all I want you to do is think about some good things in your life? I have put down 3. I'm sure if we would think about it, there would be more than 3. What are some of those good things? I am very sad that, I'm not going to be able to actually listen to it, to what you're going to be saying. But could you consciously think of the good things in your life? 1, 2, 3, more than 3? Fine. On the same lines, even as you're reflecting, I'm going to ask you to do an activity. I think most of you are using your phones. Uh, Even so, just for a minute, even while I show you the next slide, I want you to read what is in there, but I want you to do something along with this activity. I am thankful for. Now, even as you start thinking of what you are thankful for, can you get up? Just go near a window, a balcony, outside your home, wherever it would be, the closest, so that you won't really lose time in going out and coming in. Can you just take a deep breath, a nice deep breath, and be thankful for some of the things that you have in your life? I would like you, to remember what I said, to be thankful of our life, because that seems to be essential right now. All other things seem to be non-essential. Can we be thankful for the breath that is in our nostrils right now? And if you do believe in God, to be thankful to God for the life that He has given you. Gratitude is supposed to improve your emotions, your mood. It helps you perform better. When we automatically focus on negative things, if we can actually program ourselves to be thankful for things that we have in our lives, sometimes to be thankful for the things that we don't have in our lives too, I think that would be wonderful. Just something that I would like to share. When 2 years back, my mother passed away due to cancer. Of course, there was a lot of grief. It was an adverse period in my life. But do you know what? This gratitude was something that helped me through this grieving process. When I looked back at the last 2 years that I spent with my mother, I realized that God had given me that opportunity, that blessing to be with her during those last 2 years when she went through treatment. And it was so surprising. I looked back at my life and I saw, compared to the rest of the time that I spent with her, these 2 years were so precious. Our relationship improved so much. We actually sat down and spoke. We have laughed with about things that we were watching on television, that we shared with one another, and really cherished that relationship. And now when I look back, I do miss my mother still. But do you know what? I am thankful that God gave me those last 2 years, that I could be with her, that I could spend that time with her. The relationship that we shared became something which I would cherish all my life. That is what I carry with me. And if you would ask me, I would say I am thankful that God gave me those 2 years in the middle of adversity. Okay, have you done the activity that I asked you to do? Take a nice deep breath and say, thank you for the breath that I have in my nostrils. Thank you for life itself. The one thing in life that you can change is yourself. But sometimes that makes all the difference to you and to the world. I think this is something that we need to reflect upon. The change that can come in ourselves. I'm just wrapping it all up. We started off by talking about adapting to change. We all try and see how we can change the situation. But I have now concluded by saying that the change happens in you. What are the changes we can make? Fill up that reservoir so that when it is necessary, we can drink off that reservoir. I have only mentioned 3 in detail. The others are easy for us to follow. Can we see how we can fill up our reservoir during this lockdown period, during this pandemic? Because it is not just going to make a difference in yourself, to you, Remember that it makes a lot of difference to you, but it also makes a difference to the world. I think the world today needs people who will be able to not just be successful in terms of facing the adversity, but to be able to support others in times of adversity. So I would like to call all of you and put on you this responsibility of giving that social support. Now that you have this information, first the change in yourself, and then the change that you can make in others, because your attitude would matter to them also. Thank you so much for patiently listening. I'm sure you have had your thoughts. Let your thoughts continue, because as I told you in the beginning, you are the experts. How your life unfolds is going to be as a result of the way in which you think. You have a choice to decide how you think about situations. Thank you once again. Now we will move on to questions.
Yes, Zarina.
Pat-
So Mallar, can you take over from here?
Yes,
You
ma'am.
could. I'll ask. You just give us 2 minutes. I'll ask Rahim sir to disable the chat thing. So I mean, again, so that you can raise your hand if you have a question.
Madam, chat enabled, madam.
Enable
Now.
பண்ணிட்டீங்களா? Okay.
Yes, madam.
Yes. So participants, you can.
Participation.
Tanuja has raised her hand.
You can unmute, madam. No problem. You can yourself.
There is one question that I see. Ma'am, can I just take it?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, it says how to be positive to criticisms. So criticism, again, as I told you, it is coming from another person. Sometimes criticisms is self-criticism, but I understand that here you're referring to criticisms from others. Now, you again have the choice to agree to that criticism. I'm not saying that you're going to ignore what they say, because a lot of feedback that people give you are going to be opportunities for you to change. But are we going to respond to this criticism by becoming depressed, by becoming angry or annoyed? Now that is where the problem happens. You can react. You can take a moment to see, step back to see the truth behind what they are saying. If there is a correction that can be made in us, well and good. That's a wonderful learning experiences. But we do not need to feel bad about their criticism. That choice, again, remember I talked about our attitude. It is in our thinking process. Now, you can look at it as a criticism as something that is going to pull you down, or it is going to be something that builds you up. You're not going to respond immediately because you're emotionally feeling, so aroused. How dare they say this to me, and so on. If you're going to do that, that is unhealthy. There can be healthy ways to respond to criticism. The first one would be reflect on it. How much of truth is there to it? Sometimes you may also have to ask yourself the question, do I even have to respond to it? Because I know I'm not in the wrong. So think about it. Take a step back. What they are saying of you is true or not is for you to decide. A realistic appraisal is necessary. You don't have to react to it by saying, okay, now I am angry. Now I am ashamed of myself. That choice belongs to you. It can always build you up, though, as a feedback.
Ma'am, there's a question about how to cope with anger specifically.
Yes. Okay. Anger. All of us have this emotion of anger. None of us are exempt from it. If we didn't have anger, I think we would be all called angels. Okay. Anger is something that is present in all of us. Now, how you respond to that anger is where the problem happens. So they're similar to what I said about criticism. Okay. Criticism that makes you angry, for example. Do you start shouting? Do you start throwing things? Now, that would be ways in which you are going to be coping with that anger. You have become angry and all aroused inside of you. That emotion is quite normal, but what is not healthy would be the way in which you express your anger. Again, how can you express your anger constructively? You can take a step back. Take a deep breath. You need not have to respond immediately. If you find that you're too aroused, you can think about it and then decide to answer, to respond back in a very calm state of mind. Now, sometimes psychologists refer to it as, this invisible button that is on our foreheads. People know exactly when and how, and, to press that button, they know how to make us angry. Why do we give that control button to another person? Isn't it on your forehead? Think about it. For the person who asked the question. This anger is something that belongs to you. You choose how to respond to that anger. There are constructive ways in which you respond to anger. You can decide to give an assertive response. The other response would be aggressive. An assertive response would be to say, this is how I feel. This is what has hurt me. This is what I would like from you instead. Sometimes it takes a while for us to reprogram our minds because we are so tuned in to banging the door, to screaming and shouting. So take some time. Don't be too hard on yourself if you're saying, okay, I respond this way to anger. You will actually enjoy seeing the reactions on your opponent's face when you're going to be calm when they are making you angry. To realize that the control button is in your head and not in their hands. Yes.
Ma'am, the next question is, when somebody is at the verge of depression with a no supportive family, how do you deal them?
Okay. Yeah, I think if we are aware that the person is depressed, we are the immediate social support. Of course, we cannot take responsibility for them. It would help if we can encourage them and take them for medical help and assessment, because that is going to be the very first help that they need. They may not be able to do it themselves, by themselves. So we would try and encourage them and take them. So for example, to be with them as we make the appointment, as we take them for the medical assistance. Now, it is very important that the social support that we are talking about is to be continued. Now, we cannot replace the family. Let us remember that. Nor is the family, to be taking all the burden. For example, to say, I am to be blamed if something happens. Now, that is a burden that none of us can carry, even if it is a therapist. So we need to be realistic. Just be there for the person, ensure that they are safe, and make sure that they receive that medical help. And if possible, you can accompany them to the doctor.
The next question is, can positive optimism be turned to pessimism through experience? A person has
Yes.
asked, can
Yeah.
optimism...
Zarina, 1 minute.
Yes,
When
ma'am.
you answer, just
Yeah.
repeat the question loud. Malar, you have to be a little loud. And
Okay,
then...
ma'am.
Okay. Okay, so can optimistic people actually become pessimistic because of their experiences?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, it does. It does happen. That is why I said no. See, when sometimes you will find that that reservoir was full. There were there were different other ways in which we were trying to cope with the situation. So we also were optimistic. But then slowly you find that you're becoming burnt out. What happens then? See, you cannot expect, all of us to be optimistic all the time. Even as we are learning all these tools to build our resilience, let us remember we are human beings, we are vulnerable. And that reminds me, I think I should conclude by, my whole thing. I wanted to say that I think we should not hesitate to ask for help, whether we are professionals ourselves, whoever we are. I think when it goes beyond a point, that is our experience has now led us, even from, you see that 5 years back you were so optimistic, but now you find that it has changed a lot. It is okay, and it is at that point that we can seek social support. We have others to whom we can, share our burdens with. There were times we were able to take the burden ourselves, but then as you remember that, how if the the tap that you saw in one of those slides, if it, yes, it has been flowing, but the flow outside has also been continuous. So many stressful situations in your life. What happens then? You will find that you need to look for other resources. Yes, we can change from being optimistic to pessimistic. But here the good news is, so we can actually reprogram, retrain our minds to start thinking optimistically again. It is possible. Malar, is there any other question that you are?
Yeah, there are quite a few, Zarina, in the chat. I thought Malar was there. Malar, are you there? Okay, in then case we can go. I think there are a couple of
Participants.
participants. It was Rahim sir, நீங்க கொஞ்சம் unmute
Okay,
பண்ணுங்க உங்களை.
okay, madam. Okay. First one is Tanuja.
Anuja there? I don't think she's there, sir.
No, madam.
அடுத்தவங்க
Yes.
sir.
I'm here, ma'am.
Yeah.
You're there? Yeah, you can
Yes,
ask
ma'am.
your question.
We are not able to hear you, Miss Tanuja.
Now
Ah,
am I audible?
Yes, yes. Tell me. Tell me.
Okay. I just want to ask a particular question for people with infertility. When they don't find solution, they become too pessimistic. Like, so generally, even in life, when you don't find solution for your problem, does that lead to pessimism for your entire life, or can that be also turned into optimism later?
Yeah. Yeah. So, the first sentence that you said, did you mention infertility?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay.
I
Yeah.
counsel infertility.
Yes, yes. So likewise, when there are things that they cannot control, will they become pessimistic is your question, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes, definitely. Because that is something that is going to be normal. You find that, see, we would like to be in control of the situation. We would like things to change, if not today, tomorrow, a year later. But then you get this test result that it is not going to change after all. Definitely, the initial reaction is going to be one that is going to be negative. It is going to be pessimistic. See, when I spoke about learning to be optimistic or building resilience, now we are not going to be this way positive all the time. There are going to be ups and lows in our life, ups and downs in our life. Now, at such a point in time, immediately after hearing such a report or any other depressive event that happens in our life that causes us to feel sad, the initial reaction is going to be a low mood, negativity, pessimism included. But then we are not going to stay there. We are going to consciously try and see how you can move from being pessimistic to optimistic. Now, there is no, that's why I said there is no harm in remaining there and, to feel bad for a while also. Sometimes I think we are hurrying up people. Get over grief quickly, get over the negative feeling quickly. Sometimes it is a phase in our life, right? It could go on for a month or two. Yes, I would say, of course, with the help of people around us, I think, rather than waiting for that situation to finish quickly to try and take control, why not just let it be for a while? And you'll find that your mind is able to actually take charge over the situation. And yes, that infertility is not going to change. The situation will not change. But you will find that the way in which you think about yourself, the way that person thinks about himself or herself can actually change. There are a lot more things. See, for example, I said, in optimism, we say that this is one area of my life. It does bother me, but then there are other areas that I can focus on. Today, we hear of so many couples who take to adoption. Okay, now that thinking may come in only a little later. We don't have to push ourselves to move on into that attitude. The very first reaction will be negative. I think we have to acknowledge that. We need to acknowledge negative emotions inside of us as much as we acknowledge the positive ones. When you hear good news, you're happy, right? But when you hear bad news, you are sad. But who says to us that we have to move quickly from sadness to happiness? We have our own time. We have our own style of moving out of it. I think we need to give ourselves time. And when you have that freedom, that liberty, you will find that the thinking pattern can change given a period of time. I hope that answers your question. Experiences do shape us, from being optimistic to even moving on to pessimism. But the good news is we can reprogram ourselves. Giving ourselves time. I do not like this thing of, pushing ourselves, pushing others to say, do it quickly, do it now, let it be overnight change. I think we need to give ourselves that time, that liberty, and say, it may take a month or so. I will give myself that time. It is sad. It is a sad phase of my life. But it's my sadness and I need to acknowledge it.
Next, Varshini.
Varshini, are you there? We can go to the next person, sir.
Okay, madam. Usha Shri, ma'am.
Usha Shri, are you there, ma? Usha Shri? You're not there. Anybody else, sir? Otherwise, we can ask Mala to give us questions. Is Annie Thomas?
Okay.
She I think would like to ask a question. Is Annie there? அவங்கள வேணா unmute பண்ணுங்க sir. Annie Thomas.
Can they unmute themselves, ma'am? Or I think the
No,
host...
we have the...
Okay. So Ushashri, maybe we will have to unmute her.
Sir is unmuting and calling her name.
Okay.
Shri and Varshini, they have to also click their mic, madam, because when we are unmuting them, they will be asked to unmute their system. So they have to click yes, then they have to speak.
Hello.
Yes, please.
This is Ati here. Am I audible? I'm Varshini, ma'am.
Yeah, go ahead, Varshini.
As per your session, you said that facing adverse situation may help us to build optimism, and likewise, building optimism will help us to manage such situations. But
Yes.
In an institutional level, being a student, how could it help me to face bullies?
Okay, fine. Because that you're referring to a particular adverse situation in a college, in an institution, where a person has to face bullies. So we are talking about bullying as a problem, being a victim of bullying, ragging,
Yes,
you can say. Okay. Now, it is, I would say, if I have to empathize with, the problems that the victims go through, it is sad that they are going through something very it's a reality in their lives, well, day in and day out as they're going to college, this is something that they are going to face, and I have heard of people who have continued to go through this the effect, the consequences of this trauma that they have faced in their college years. Okay, now while you're going through that trauma, while in the middle of it, there are some things that we can do. Now, what stifles us here would be all those negative emotions, because we have again reacted to what those bullies are doing to us. It is natural. Anybody in that situation would do it to us. You know what primarily comes out when you talk to a victim of bullying? They will say, I should have done something about it. I think I was not strong enough. I think I was to be blamed. You see that pessimism that has creeped in? Whose fault it is when someone is being bullied? Is it the victim's fault or the bully's fault? I'm sure all of us agree, right? Yes, it is the bully. Okay, but who is taking up the blame? It is the victim.
The victim.
Yeah, I think we need to have that awareness when the person, so we are not here to judge, to condemn the bullies. I believe that they themselves have a mental health issue. They have problems that they are going through, or it could be just that peer pressure. Okay, without that, they wouldn't go to this extent of harming another person. Understanding that would help the victim realize that it is not their problem, it is the bully's problem. Now, once you realize that, you will move out of that shame, move out of that guilt, and say, okay, now what can I do about this situation? Most of the time, it is because of fear that the victim is not able to go to anybody else and share it. There should be more than one person that they should be able to share this with. Now, that courage comes only again with that attitude change. Who is to be blamed? Am I to?
No.
Yeah. So, can you hear?
Yes.
So, yeah. Am I to be blamed for what is happening? When that thought process changes, the person is more free to indulge in behaviors that would help them safeguard themselves. Report this to authorities, look for social support, rather than going alone. Gather the support of a group of friends who will confidentially help them. All of this is possible only when that attitude change happens. That is why I said I think we need to focus on the thinking process. Now, the thinking process of a victim of bullying is, I am to be blamed. They are not choosing anybody else. They chose me. So I am weak. I am vulnerable. I am a coward. I would rather want to say that these apply to the bully and not to the victim. So when the thinking pattern changes, they are free to indulge in behaviors to safeguard themselves and come out of this traumatic situation. Now, for those who have gone through this bullying and as an aftermath, they survive it, they also go through the same guilt. What I know, I wish I had done something at that point in time. I was the one to be blamed. If you could just make them understand that they were not to be blamed, even if they had tried anything in that situation, the trauma is still true, and you'll have to deal with that trauma either with the help of a counselor, therapist, or with a loved one. I think it is necessary that you help them go through that process of healing. So I think the thinking process is the first thing that needs to change. Apply it to any negative situation: criticisms, anger, bullying. What thoughts go on in our mind?
We have Aditya. Aditya wants to ask a question. Aditya Kumar.
Am I audible?
Yeah, now yes, go ahead.
Yes, ma'am. My question is, there are some times in which we feel like we don't have any positive event which has happened with us, or there are people who think that I cannot see that white light in the dark shadow filled with dark emotions. So how to be positive or optimistic about the current situation in such situations?
Yeah. Again, we are not trying to see how we can change our thinking, because there is some light in the shadows. To create the light is inside of you. Remember, I told you about my own experience. Now, it was a loss in my life. Okay, I lost my mother. Now, it was during that grieving process that I had to definitely, there were thoughts of, not, there were extreme grieving that I went through. Okay, I'm not exempt from it. Now, even as I went through it, this thought actually made a difference to me, that I had these 2 years where I could have, I spent time with her, and that was the most fruitful, most enriching time for me as well as for her. So nothing has changed. She has not, for, if I have to say that things have to change, I would love my mother to be there with me, but that is not going to happen. But I still have her memories. So again, the thinking is what matters. What pictures can you paint in your heart is what matters. I think God has given us that ability. Our imagination, our mind has that ability to. See, we are not in control of any event that happens outside. For example, this pandemic. People said 1 month, 2 months. Now they say it is the end of the year. Then some say it is never ending. Can we take control? The government is not able to. Health, people in health research are not able to. So instead of trying to take control of the situation, waiting for change in circumstances, all I'm saying is to look at what is inside of you, to focus on your thinking pattern. There is a difference. If you're waiting for your thinking pattern to change, only if there is a change in the situation, it may or may not happen, right? Things can turn out for worse. But what is inside of you, in your control, is your attitude towards it. To create that light, not waiting for that light in the shadow, creating that light is up to you. I think we are all creative. We will be able to see the upside of things, the good part of a disaster also.
Ma'am, there's a
Next
question
is
from one
Ushashri madam.
participant.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, go ahead.
Good morning, Zarina ma'am. Thank you so much, Rahim sir, for the help. And good morning, Sucharita ma'am. My question to you is, Zarina ma'am, there was a slide which you showed where there was a definition of optimism and pessimism with greenery behind below the picture, and there was some line saying, but in addition, someone feels something else. The possibility to change the picture, of making the picture prevail, the light prevail. Ma'am, could you please explain me a little further on this? Because actually, now in my personal life, you must be knowing my dad passed away very recently, a year before. And actually, we all, my mother, myself, and my elder sister, we are all coping up with that, and a lot of other things as well. So now it's like I am the head of the family. I'm the acting head of the family, taking care of all the things with respect to finance, property, everything. So it's like when there is a lack of something and we are emotionally coping, there are a lot of other things also coming in. So please help me. I'm becoming optimistic here, and also I would like to know what is that addition, something, see something else. What is that something else, ma'am? Please help me understand that.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm glad that we had this forum to connect, Ushashri.
Yes, ma'am. Otherwise,
yeah.
else also I would have else reached you personally and asked this question, because and
Yes.
this slide helped me a lot. In fact.
Yeah.
Usha, unmute. You have to mute yourself. Only then, yeah. Audio, it was echoing.
Okay, so I'm glad you had the courage to actually speak about the pain that you're experiencing. And see, it's a year, since this has happened, and it has been something that has been a blow for you as well as for your entire family. And as you have said, it has not ended there. You have a lot of responsibilities to share. I think somewhere you're looking for the answers. And you were referring to that slide which talked about optimist, pessimist, and an idealist, which says, you create, you look for that light and so on. So maybe it struck a chord in you because you're trying to look for answers. But if you're looking for the answers outside of you, Shashri, it may be difficult for you to find the answer. What about looking inside? Okay, in terms of your own strength, the way in which you have coped with the situation. Of course, grieving is something we can't limit to a year, for a day, for a month, and so on. Okay, and it may take a while. Why not give yourself that time during this period? Even if you don't have those answers to the question, isn't that okay? Would you not be okay with it? Because it refers to your own questions. Do we all need to have answers to all the problems that we have? Sometimes I think we end our lives without knowing answers for some. Are we comfortable with that? Is my question to you. Just think about it. Looking for answers and not finding them is going to worry you more. Already there is grieving that's happening right now, and there are additional responsibilities. Now, to talk this up, if you're going to be looking for answers, why not we just look at it as, yes, let me be the pessimist for now, because this is what my situation is like. When the time comes, when I am ready for it, which will come, there will be a light. But then why rush it up? Why think of it as, now I want it? Why not give yourself that time? I would like, if I were to, suggest this to you, just give yourself the time for you to be able to come out of this. In fact, I would say, why do we think of coming out at all? These are memories of your father, the most special person in your life. Now, why should we want to move out of it? There would be a time when you actually have looked at all of these, made sense of it, and you will move out with memories. Like I mentioned to you, it took me a while, Shashi. It was not immediate for me too. I can, kind of go along with what you are saying, because it was recently that my mother passed away too. But it takes a while where you have memories, but the memories are now sweet ones, not those painful, searing, ones that still attack us. Wait for it. I think you should just let it be for a while. Experience your present, as I told you, for now, rather than looking for closure. Closure will happen in its time. Meanwhile, you can share about this and, to people who will understand you, so that you're able to understand what you're going through.
There's Aarti C waiting for a long time.
Okay. Yeah, Aarti.
Morning, ma'am. Thank you for the beautiful session. Ma'am, my question is, what is your thoughts and take on online negativism? Actually, I am very socially active, and I'm in a lot of groups. So there are a lot of examples, but particularly I will say about one example. It's been there long. Like, using of TikTok is
I lost you in between.
Considered as a very, very bad adding memes and putting down people. Ma'am, can you hear me now?
Yes. Tell me, continue.
Okay. So in particular, some groups, I can see that people sharing memes, sharing contents, defaming people, those who put their TikToks. I'm not saying using TikTok is good, but as a psychologist, as a mental health professional, what is good for someone may not be good for someone. So that is each and one's own call. But purposely putting down people just because they do something which makes them happy and as a group, they are pulling down people and they make it as a stigma. So not only for TikTok, even for many other things, this is happening. Online negativism using photos, pictures. So that affects more. So what can you say that how as a mental health professional, we can tackle that?
Yeah, it is so true what you're saying, because the social media, and maybe I think more of our time is now spent in the social media because of this lockdown and pandemic. And it is true that you find when it is a group, you will find that there is a lot of pulling down of people. And when there are pictures of them posted, or when it is a TikTok post that is given and so on, it is sad. It is really sad that that should be the case, because we're talking about a group of friends, right? We're not talking about a group of enemies also. It is rather an irony that we are finding that this pulling down is happening with a group of friends. But I also would like to look at their mentality. Now, what are we seeing even in our movies, in the social media right now? I think we are looking more in terms of we are being fed, overfed, I should say, with this idea of putting down somebody. There's something called as this dark humor, and we are laughing at the tragedies that others go through and so on. Maybe that is why we ourselves are getting desensitized to it, especially the younger generation. I do not know. It's sad to say, as a mental health professional, you're able to understand. I always, have this, I go along with your idea. I say, if it is friends, shouldn't they be encouraging and building the other, the friend up rather than pulling them down? It doesn't seem to be happening. So somewhere, the deed has been done. It has already happened. It is there in the minds of youngsters or even older people. Why should I say just youngsters? To pull people down, to criticize, to make fun rather than encourage. I think again a reprogramming is needed. And I would say that we as mental health professionals have a great role to play. And that is why in my workshops, or when I talk to my students, I ask them about, how special friendships are. And, most of the time what they do, get them to be aware of, how they look at encouragement and, complimenting and so on with their friends when compared to pulling people apart, teasing them. Even bullying comes in that, range, I would say. So if it is true in a group face to face, it is going to be true even in social media. I think we should, raise our voice against it in a very sensitive manner. Okay, to be able to just voice our opinions. For example, questions that you can ask: isn't this our friend, our own friend? Are we doing this to our own friends? Would we even think of it with our enemies? Maybe all they need to know is, a little bit of awareness, again, to be reprogrammed to, that we do good things to people and we don't hurt them. All this, I think, needs to be taught again, especially children, I would say. If there are parents watching, I think we need to, teach them while they are young, encouraging, saying thank you, saying please, saying words of kindness rather than tearing each other apart. Somewhere this education has to happen again.
Yes,
and I think it can start with awareness created by mental health professionals.
Next,
I think that will be. Illing sir, I think we are running out of time.
Okay, only one Sudha, I unmuted her, madam. Then
Okay.
let it
Yeah, that will be the last question then.
Okay. Yeah.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Thank you for your excellent session, ma'am. I am audible?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, ma'am. Thank you for your session, ma'am. I have a problem. I am in a point to take a decision, and I have two ways to take my decisions. But the two ways, if I take the two ways also, I have a lot of disadvantages. In this position, I was put up in a blank, and I don't know to choose. As you told, we can't change people around us. We have to accept the things and we have to change ourselves. Even though I have a lot of disadvantages, I am not in a position to take the decision. So I was put up in a blank. What can I do in this position, ma'am?
Okay. So it looks like you're very aware of what you're going through. I'm happy about that. You're clear. Okay. So there is awareness of, what you're going through right now. So there are two decisions in front of you. Yeah. There are two decisions in front of you. Yeah, there are two decisions, and you are the one who has to make a choice. Now, before making a choice, it always helps to have information with you. Information can be from different sources, either from, social media, from, authentic information, or consulting with people who mean a lot to you. You collect all the information, and you said rightly, right? There were some pros, there are some cons. Now, finally, it would be really helpful that you take that decision. See, always there will have to be that one, right? You can't take both, and you can't go that way. So when you do make the decision, you go with that understanding that now that I have taken the decision after informed choices that I have made, and it is my choice, there may still be disadvantages, but I am ready to face those disadvantages also. Now, again, it is a little scary to do that, because once you do it, it's like you're going to be blaming yourself. Why did I do this? Okay, that is the fear that prevents us, you're saying now you're at a blank, you said. Now, why are you at a blank? Think about it and see. The possible reasons could be, once I take and I go in, I start my journey and I find it's not working out. Now, who says you cannot go back? Or you can rectify it. Okay? We still find that the choices are inside of us. Sometimes we imagine that the dead end is so real. It may not be. It may be created by us in our imagination. So go ahead, make an informed decision, a choice, depending on what you listen to, take a choice. But finally, what you decide is for yourself. You do that. And then when you take that step ahead, if you face obstacles, you will be prepared. You can tell yourself, yes, let me face this because I have made the choice. Otherwise, you're going to be blaming somebody, blaming yourself. Let's not go with that, that shame and blame game that we play. With freedom, okay, I am moving ahead and I make a choice. So think about it, see what is stopping you from making that decision between the two, choosing one out of the two.
Thank you, ma'am. Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
Okay, Dr. Zarina, I think we have to, because of paucity of time, we will have to end the webinar now. Now, what we'll be doing is shortly, we will enable the feedback link. So once you fill the feedback, immediately after the webinar, you will get your e-certificate. After which, tonight we will be sending you the PPT of today's presentation, in which Dr. Zarina's email ID will be there. So those of you who still would like to, address your questions to her, you can do it, and you can that way get in touch and get back your answers. I'm sorry we are not able to accommodate all the questions, and thank you so much, Dr. Zarina, for this wonderful presentation. We'll have Ms. Malakodi, now the organizing secretary, to call the efforts, will give the vote of thanks. Over to Malak.
Good morning to all. I deem it a
Yes.
great honor and privilege to propose the vote of thanks for this webinar session on adaptation to change, building resilience on the behalf of the Department of Psychology, Presidency College, Chennai. I would like to quote the words of Alice Walker. Thank you is the best prayer that anyone could say. Let me first of all start by giving glory to God Almighty for making this maiden attempt possible. I thank our resource person for the day, Dr. A. Zarina, Assistant Professor, Women Christian College, Chennai, for benevolently accepting our invitation and delivering an edifying session this morning about the necessity to evolve with change with the changing scenario. Thank you, ma'am, for emphasizing the importance of finding a true purpose in life by embracing change. I also wish to express my gratitude to our principal in charge, Dr. O.R. Devanathan, for his guidance. My heartfelt thanks are also due to the director of the college IQAC team, Dr. M. Abdul Rahim, and his team for helping us in all our technical arrangements. I extend my thanks to our beloved head and all my colleagues for their ever-present support and help for all the arrangements and the efforts behind this. Last but not the least, I would like to thank and place on record the overwhelming registrations of more than 520 participants from over 101 different institutions from all over the country for their active participation. I hope that each of you present today would commit yourselves for working towards a better and safe tomorrow. I believe that this session would have been useful to many. I kindly request all participants to send in your feedbacks about this session and the further topics of your interest for future sessions. Feedback forms, as told by ma'am, would be mailed to your mail ID. Thank you.
Thank you so much for all your lovely appreciation notes or on the chat screen. It is really encouraging. I'm sure Dr. Zarina also will find it strengthening to go through all that. Okay, so I think it's time to say goodbye. Thank you for being with us, and God bless.
Thank you all of you. Thank you, ma'am.